This video was made possible by Skillshare. A little bit more on that later.
Hey everyone, it's carsonmtech here, back with another video, and in this video I'm going to be focusing on a handful of tips in regards to flying the DJI Mavic Air 2 in extreme temperature environments. Specifically, I'm going to be focusing on the spectrum that is in the cold today, and I will admit I'm not in an Alaska type of environment right now. The temperatures aren't sub-zero, but they are sub 32 degrees, and sub 32 degrees for any drone on the market is not the most ideal scenarios to fly a drone. So I'll be offering some tips and tricks as far as flying in these environments, and also I'll just be going over generally how well the Mavic Air 2 actually performs in this extreme temperature, because you know it's a bit cheaper than some of the other drones, but it is a newer drone than other ones that have been released in the past. So I'm curious to know how this performs. So with that said, let's get right into tip number one. All right, so getting right into tip number one is in regards to getting set up for flight. This one is a recommendation to purchase something, and that is to get yourself a landing pad. This one specifically is from Hobby Inc. RC or something like that. I don't even know. You're going to either need something like this, or you're going to need to be comfortable with hand launching and landing your drone, because you can't go and sit your drone down on the snow. So you're going to need to get yourself a landing pad like this, place it down, so then you have a good place to put your drone down onto. As far as this one goes, you do not have to get a landing pad, especially one like this. You could honestly just use a piece of cardboard or a piece of wood, anything really that's around that is a flat surface that doesn't have snow on it, because you do not want snow to go and get thrown up into the propellers, because that would not be an ideal scenario. Tip number two is kind of self-explanatory, but it is an important thing to know, especially if you're a beginner to flying. Do not fly your drone if it is actively snowing. Although it could be a really light snow and you may think, oh, it's frozen water, what's it gonna do? Well, actually, if you are flying your drone and the higher up you get into the sky, it tends to go and start to condense on your propellers, which can cause uneven flight and could even result in your drone crashing. It is something that you just do not want to have happen. So if it is actively snowing outside, don't go outside. I would wait until it has stopped snowing. Next up for tip number three may answer a question that you might have had since the beginning of this video, and that is in regards to where is the battery in my drone? I don't have a battery in right now. What's up with that? And this tip is make sure to go and store your batteries in a warm place up to literally the minute of flight. So if you aren't anywhere near a warm heat source like a house or a car, then I would recommend going and putting it in a pocket of your coat or something that is near your body heat. So I've got mine stored in here. I don't know if I can get it out with my big gloves right now, but there you have it. So I've got one battery stored in here. I would highly recommend doing this, and if you're somewhere where it's extremely cold, then I would even recommend going out and picking up some hot hands and putting those in alongside your battery, because you just do not want your battery to get cold, because the chemical reactions that happen inside a battery just don't work in the cold as well as they do in the warmth. So make sure to go and have your battery stored in a warm place. And as I'm putting this battery into my drone, before getting to tip number four, let's go to a quick word from today's sponsor, Skillshare.
If for whatever reason you have never heard of Skillshare before, Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes where millions come together to take the next step in their creative journey by learning. Whether it be photography, aerial videography, productivity, or an endless number of other topics, Skillshare is the absolute best platform to expand your skills and gaining deeper knowledge in the things that you already love learning about. For me personally, I found the Advanced Aerial Videography class by Wild Rabbit Productions that I took a couple of weeks ago to be a very insightful class in planning out your drone shots before your drone even leaves the ground. I actually used some of the storyboarding skills that I learned from that class to assist in making this very video that you're watching right now, and I plan to use those skills throughout 2021 and my creative career as well. Skillshare is constantly launching new premium classes that are entirely ad-free and available to Skillshare members for less than $10 a month with an annual subscription. Members get unlimited access to Skillshare's entire catalog of content, so join today and become a member, because thanks to Skillshare, the first 1,000 of you guys watching this very video will get a free trial to Skillshare's premium membership. So join today and take the next step in your creative journey. Thanks Skillshare for supporting the channel, and on that note, let's get right back into tip number 4.
Oh, well, that was quick. Now that we're back here though, while you were gone, I was setting up the drone and getting it ready for flight. Kind of struggling because I was a little cold. One thing I forgot to mention is make sure you also store your controller in a warm environment as well, because obviously this has a battery in it as well, and it also struggles in colder environments. However, it's not as power demanding as the motors are on your drone, so it's not as big of a deal. But after getting this powered on, tip number 4 is make sure to go and leave your drone on for around 2 to 3 minutes to allow it to warm up before taking off. You don't want to go and just turn it on and take off really quickly, because you do want to allow it a little bit of time to get its bearings and warm up a little bit before taking off. Tip number 5 is turn on phone charging. So this one also has to do with batteries. It's a big trend here, I know, but this one is super helpful if you are on an iOS device or even if you're on Android. But if you're on Android, by default, the DJI Fly app actually turns on phone charging through your remote controller by default, so you don't have to worry about enabling this. But if you are on iOS, on an iPhone or iPad or something like that, go to the 3 dots in the upper right hand corner, go to the control tab, scroll down, usually you're at the top, but scroll down to the remote controller section, and right here it will have phone charging. Click on that and your phone will begin charging from the remote controller. As you can see, it is now charging. If I turn that off and look, it'll stop charging. So this is something you should have enabled, because even your phone's battery will go and struggle in cold environments like this. So it's best to have that turned on, so then the controller can kind of keep your phone topped off and prevent it from shutting down because of the excessive cold. I've actually had this happen a number of times in the past, and it is not great when you're out flying and your phone just decides to kick the bucket and shut off. It's quite annoying. Tip number 6 after taking off is be prepared for the reaction times of your drone to not be as it usually is in a regular environment. Because the drone's batteries kind of struggle to put out as much power when it's in the cold, expect if you're going to go and crash into something that you should have a little bit more of a shorter reaction time, because it will take a little bit longer for the motors to be able to put out enough power to bring a drone to a stop. I've experienced this a lot more on older drones. As far as with the Mavic Air 2, it's not as big of a deal, at least this far. I've not had any major issues, but it's still a good thing to account for, especially if you are in colder environments than what I am in right now. Alongside this tip is, if your drone, like the Mavic Air 2, happens to have a sports mode, it might be wise to fly in the sports mode a bit more, because this will be able to put out a little bit more power than your normal mode. But at the same time, the sports mode will not be able to put out as much power as it would normally as well. So also keep that in mind, because that could be an issue. Tip number 7 is probably the most useful one here, and that is pay attention to your battery levels. So in a colder environment like this, the battery will tend to have a shorter lifespan, so don't expect to be able to fly for the regular 30 minutes or so with the Mavic Air 2 or the full length of other drones. So to check this, it's really easy. All you got to do, in the top right where there's that little circle, that's actually your battery percentage, if you didn't know that. If you tap on it, it will actually show the current breakdown of what it is estimating your total lifespan of the battery is before it will begin returning to home, before it will go and force a landing, and also where the battery will just be completely depleted. So as you can see, I've got around 26, 27 minutes before the battery is completely dead. You do not want to bring it back that late, because in this cold, you don't want to risk it. It could take a little bit longer to get back to your home point, so keep that in mind. Man, I am like the batteries. My face, my hands, everything is so cold. Real quick before getting into my final tips and tricks, let's talk a little bit about how the Mavic Air 2 is performing in these environments. I'm actually quite surprised how well it's doing right now. I think that I'm more frozen than the drone is at this point. I can hardly speak, but it has actually been doing a really good job in the time that I've flown it so far. I flew it a little bit earlier today and I had similar results. It's doing just a very good job in this cold weather, which is just quite surprising because on the past drones that I've flown before in these environments, I would very frequently get motor overload issues or just errors that don't usually pop up. So the fact that this is doing so well in the cold is really awesome. And overall, I'm just also really satisfied once again with how good the sensor is on this Mavic Air 2. I mean, just look at some of this footage that I've gotten out of the drone flying in these winter scenarios. You can get some beautiful, beautiful videos and photos out of this drone when flying in the cold. As long as you are taking proper precautions, you should be great. All right, getting back into the tips, technically tip number 8 or bonus tip 1 is to have multiple batteries. This one is important if you are looking to fly a lot in colder environments because you just won't have that much flight time on a single battery. So I would at least have 2 batteries in order to go and have maximum flight time in the air in these colder environments. Tip number 9, or rather insight number 9, is don't go and fly your Mavic Air 2 or really any drone in high altitudes in the cold, because in the cold, the batteries can't perform as well. And although the air does get thicker or more dense in cold environments, the air gets thinner the higher the altitude you go. So it really won't be able to counteract that. And the higher you get, the more you won't be able to go and fly your drone, or you'll get motor overheating errors, different things that just are not good for the drone. And in general, for the Mavic Air 2, if you're interested in what its max altitude is it is 5,000 meters or around 16,400 feet. So if you are somewhere that is really high above sea level for whatever reason, you're planning on hiking up a mountain and it happens to be winter and you're just into something crazy like that, then just make sure to pay attention to what your altitude is above sea level. Flying above ground level is a different thing than above sea level, so make sure to pay attention to that. Finally, tip number 10 or bonus tip number 3 is in regards to when you are charging the batteries of your Mavic Air 2. When charging the batteries in this guy, I would make sure to go and wait at least 30 minutes before plopping it onto the charger, because as you're going from a cold environment to a warm environment, such as inside, there will be condensation that can build up on the battery. So I would make sure to go and let this warm up to room temperature before plugging it into a charger. The same goes for your remote controller as well. And also avoid touching the camera lens on your camera. It's very tempting, I know, when you go inside and there's some fog forming on the thing, but don't touch it because you could go and scratch the lens. You do not want to do that, obviously. So there you have it. That is pretty much all the tips and tricks I've got for you as far as flying the Mavic Air 2 in a cold environment like this. What do you think? Are you gonna go out and fly your drone in the winter, in the snow, and get some beautiful shots, or is it not worth it because of all the risks? Let me know down in the comments below. I'd love to hear it. And also, while you're down there, if you liked this video, make sure to let me know by clicking the thumbs up button down below, as well as subscribing by clicking that circle right below me. And also, you can check out some of my last videos by clicking those boxes right over there. But on that note, I'm gonna get inside, warm up my face, and hope to be able to talk again in a future video that I hope to see you there. Peace.